Good morning, and welcome back. Before we get into today's topic, I want you to do something for me. I want you to think back to what you ate yesterday. Don't judge it yet, just picture it. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever snacks came in between. Got it in your head? Now here's the question I want you to sit with for the next 40 minutes. How much of what you ate yesterday did you choose specifically because you thought it was healthy? A yogurt because it said light on the label. A salad because it felt like the responsible lunch. Maybe a smoothie because it had the word green or detox printed across the front of the cup. Whole grain toast instead of white, because you know whole grain is supposed to be better for you. Here's the uncomfortable truth I want to walk you through today. A lot of what gets marketed to us as healthy, especially to adults over 60, was designed with one specific goal in mind: reducing calories, reducing fat, or reducing cholesterol. Those aren't bad goals. But somewhere along the way, an entire category of foods got optimized for those goals while quietly leaving out something your body needs more of as you age, not less. And that something is protein. This isn't a small technical detail. This is central to whether you maintain your strength, your balance, your independence, and your ability to do the things you want to do for the next 20, 30 years of your life. So today, I want to walk you through 7 foods that carry a healthy reputation, that you very likely have in your kitchen right now, and explain honestly what they're doing, what they're not doing, and what you can do instead. I'm not here to scare you away from your favorite foods. I'm here to help you actually understand what's on your plate, so you can make decisions with real information instead of a marketing label doing the thinking for you. Before we get into the list, I want to spend a few minutes explaining why this matters so much specifically after 60, because once you understand the biology underneath this, every single item on today's list will make a lot more sense. Why muscle changes after 60, and why protein becomes more important, not less. Starting sometime in your 30s, and accelerating more noticeably after 60, your body begins a gradual process of losing muscle mass and strength if you don't actively work to preserve it. This process has a name in medicine, sarcopenia, and it's now recognized as a legitimate, defined condition, not just an inevitable side effect of getting older that you're supposed to accept quietly. Several things are happening at once during this stage of life. First, your body becomes somewhat less efficient at using the protein you eat to actually build and repair muscle tissue. Researchers call this anabolic resistance. In practical terms, it means that a serving of protein that would have triggered a strong muscle-building response in your body at 35 might trigger a smaller response at 65, unless you adjust how much protein you're eating and how it's distributed across your day. Second, hormonal shifts that happen with age, changes in growth hormone and other factors involved in tissue repair, mean that the margin for error gets smaller. When you were younger, an imperfect diet with inconsistent protein intake might not have shown up as a noticeable problem for years. After 60, those same inconsistencies show up faster, and they show up as things you can feel: more fatigue, slower recovery, more difficulty getting up from a low chair, a little more unsteadiness on your feet. Third, and this is the part that connects directly to today's topic, a lot of nutrition advice and food marketing over the last several decades has been built around cutting fat and cutting calories, because those were seen as the primary levers for weight management and heart health. That focus wasn't wrong, exactly, but it wasn't built with muscle preservation in mind. And in a lot of cases, when food companies reduce fat or reduce calories, the easiest ingredient to also reduce, intentionally or as a side effect, is protein. Fat and protein are both calorie-dense. Cutting either one lowers the calorie count on the label. But only one of them is actively working to protect your muscle. So when you pick up a product labeled light, diet, low fat, or even just generally healthy, it's worth asking a very specific question: what happened to the protein content to get this product to where it is? That question is going to come up again and again as we go through today's list. One more piece of context before we start. Current nutrition guidance for older adults generally points toward needing more protein per pound of body weight than younger adults, not less, specifically to counteract anabolic resistance and to help preserve strength, balance, and independence. That protein also needs to be spread relatively evenly across your meals throughout the day, rather than concentrated mostly at dinner, because your body can only make efficient use of so much protein in a single sitting for the purpose of muscle repair. With all of that as our foundation, let's get into the list. We're counting down from 7, and I promise you, the very last one on this list is the one that catches the most people off guard, because it's often the food people are proudest of choosing. Number 7, low-fat and fat-free yogurt. Let's start here because yogurt has such a strong reputation as a health food that almost nobody questions it. And to be fair, that reputation is partly earned. Plain yogurt, made properly, is a genuinely good source of protein, and it comes with beneficial bacteria that support gut health, which itself plays a role in how well you absorb nutrients from the rest of your diet. The issue isn't yogurt as a category. The issue is specifically what happens during the process of making yogurt low-fat or fat-free for the grocery store shelf. Fat carries a lot of the flavor and the satisfying, creamy texture that makes yogurt enjoyable to eat. When manufacturers strip that fat out, the product that's left behind often tastes thin, watery, and a little bland. To fix that problem and keep the product appealing to consumers, many low-fat and fat-free yogurts have added sugar mixed back in, sometimes in fairly significant amounts, along with thickening agents to try to recreate some of that lost texture. So what you end up with, in a lot of cases, is a product that still says yogurt on the front, still sits in the dairy aisle next to the plain, full-fat versions, and still carries that general health food halo in people's minds, but nutritionally behaves quite differently. Some flavored low-fat and fat-free yogurts carry a sugar content that starts to approach what you'd find in a dessert, while offering less protein per serving than a comparable serving of plain, full-fat Greek yogurt or Icelandic-style skyr. Here's why this specifically matters for your muscles, beyond just the general concern about added sugar. Your body needs a certain minimum amount of high-quality protein in a single meal to meaningfully trigger muscle protein synthesis, the process where your body repairs and rebuilds muscle tissue. If breakfast is a flavored, low-fat yogurt that's mostly sugar with a modest amount of protein, you may be consuming calories without giving your body what it actually needs from that meal. And there's a second issue layered on top of that. Diets that are consistently higher in added sugar are associated with more systemic inflammation in the body, and chronic low-grade inflammation is something that can interfere with the body's ability to repair and maintain muscle tissue over time. So you're not just missing an opportunity, you may be actively working against yourself. What should you do instead? This one has an easy fix. Choose plain, full-fat or full-protein Greek yogurt, or a plain skyr. Read the label and compare the protein content directly against a flavored, low-fat version of the same brand, side by side. You'll often see a meaningful difference. If you want sweetness, add your own fruit, a small drizzle of honey, or a sprinkle of cinnamon. That way, you control exactly how much sugar goes in, and you keep the protein content high. This single swap, plain yogurt instead of flavored low-fat yogurt, is one of the easiest changes on this entire list to make, and it's one you can start with tomorrow morning. Number 6, fruit juice and smoothies marketed as meal replacements. I want to be careful with this one, because fruit itself deserves real credit. Whole fruit is genuinely good for you. It contains fiber, vitamins, antioxidants, and a wide range of beneficial plant compounds. Nothing about today's discussion is meant to discourage you from eating an apple, a banana, a handful of berries, or any whole fruit you enjoy. The concern is specifically about what happens once fruit is juiced or blended and then marketed as something that can substitute for an entire meal. When fruit is juiced, the fiber, which is the part of the fruit that slows down how quickly sugar enters your bloodstream and helps you feel full and satisfied, is largely removed. What's left is essentially the sugar and water content of the fruit in concentrated liquid form. Your body absorbs that sugar quickly, which can cause a fast rise in blood sugar followed by a corresponding crash a little while later, often leaving you hungrier sooner than you would have been after eating the same fruit whole. And critically for our topic today, a glass of fruit juice provides close to no protein at all. If juice is replacing a meal, rather than being an occasional addition alongside a real meal, you're essentially consuming calories and sugar without giving your body any of the raw material it needs for muscle repair during that eating window. Smoothies occupy a bit of a middle ground, and they can absolutely be part of a healthy diet when they're made thoughtfully. A smoothie built around Greek yogurt, milk, or a quality protein powder, with fruit added for flavor, can be a genuinely solid, protein-rich option. The problem is with a specific category of smoothies, the ones you'll find at many smoothie chains or in the refrigerated section of the grocery store, that are marketed heavily around words like detox, cleanse, or green, and are really built primarily from fruit juice, and sometimes ice cream or sorbet as a base. These can carry several hundred calories, a significant amount of sugar, and only a few grams of protein, if that. Think about the cumulative effect of this over the course of a day. If breakfast is a fruit-heavy smoothie with little to no real protein, and lunch happens to be a light salad, which we'll get to shortly, by the time you reach dinner, you're already significantly behind on the protein your body needed earlier in the day. And here's an important detail that surprises a lot of people. You can't simply make up for that shortfall later. Muscle protein synthesis works best when protein intake is spread relatively evenly across your meals. Eating very little protein for breakfast and lunch, then trying to compensate with a large amount at dinner, is a far less effective strategy than getting a reasonable, adequate amount of protein at each meal throughout the day. The fix here isn't to give up smoothies or juice entirely. It's to be intentional. If you enjoy a smoothie, make sure it includes a real protein source, Greek yogurt, milk, cottage cheese, or a protein powder you trust and enjoy the taste of. And treat fruit juice as an occasional beverage alongside a real meal, rather than a meal replacement on its own. Number 5. Reduced fat peanut butter and other diet nut butters. This one tends to surprise people, because most of us assume peanut butter is peanut butter, and the reduced fat version on the shelf next to it must simply be the smarter, lighter choice for anyone watching their weight or their heart health. Here's what's actually happening when peanut butter or another nut butter is labeled reduced fat. Manufacturers remove a portion of the natural oil that separates out of ground peanuts, the oil that gives natural peanut butter its rich texture and flavor. But removing that fat creates a problem, because fat is a large part of what makes peanut butter taste satisfying and feel smooth on your tongue. To compensate for the flavor and texture that's lost, many reduced-fat peanut butters have added sugar and sometimes starches or stabilizers mixed back in to recreate a similar mouthfeel and make the product still taste appealing. Here's the part that really surprises people. Because of these added ingredients, reduced-fat peanut butter often ends up with roughly the same number of calories per serving as regular peanut butter, sometimes very close to it. So you're not even meaningfully reducing your calorie intake in most cases. What you are doing is trading a portion of healthy, naturally occurring fat for added sugar, while gaining essentially nothing in return. Why does this matter specifically for you at this stage of life? The natural fats found in nuts and nut butters, the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, play a real role in helping your body absorb fat-soluble vitamins, specifically vitamins D, E, and K. Vitamin D in particular is closely tied to bone health and to muscle function, and many older adults already run low on vitamin D, especially if sun exposure is limited. If you're consistently choosing lower-fat versions of foods across your diet, you may be inadvertently reducing your ability to properly absorb some of the vitamins your body needs most. Beyond the vitamin absorption piece, natural fats also contribute to satiety, meaning they help you feel fuller for longer after a meal or snack. A reduced-fat peanut butter that's been supplemented with sugar may actually leave you feeling hungry again sooner, which can lead to snacking on something else shortly afterward, undermining the very goal the reduced-fat product was marketed to help you achieve. The fix here is refreshingly simple. Choose natural peanut butter, or any natural nut butter, where the ingredient list is short, ideally just the nut itself and maybe a small amount of salt. Yes, the fat content will be higher per serving than the reduced-fat version. But it's the right kind of fat, doing useful work in your body, without unnecessary added sugar riding along with it. Number 4. Whole grain breads and cereals that lead with fiber but say very little about protein. I want to be clear up front that whole grains are not the villain here. Fiber matters, especially as we age. It supports digestive regularity, helps manage blood sugar more steadily, and contributes to a feeling of fullness after meals. Nothing about today's discussion is suggesting you should avoid whole grains. The issue is a specific and common assumption, that because a bread or cereal is labeled whole grain, it must also be doing meaningful work to support your muscles. In most cases, it isn't, at least not on its own. A slice of whole wheat bread typically provides somewhere around 3 to 4 grams of protein. A bowl of whole grain cereal, even the varieties marketed heavily around fiber content and heart health, often provides only a gram or 2 of protein per serving, and depending on the specific brand, may also carry a meaningful amount of added sugar. If your typical breakfast is toast and cereal, technically whole grain, technically aligned with general dietary guidelines around fiber, you may be starting your day with very little actual protein. And the timing of that matters more than people realize. Overnight, while you sleep, your body goes 8 hours or more without any incoming nutrients. During that stretch, your body shifts slightly toward breaking down tissue rather than building it, simply because there's no incoming fuel or raw material. Breakfast is a genuine opportunity to reverse that shift and give your body the protein it needs to start repairing and maintaining muscle tissue for the day ahead. If that first meal is almost entirely carbohydrate, whole grain or otherwise, with very little protein alongside it, that window gets missed, and it gets missed every single day if the pattern repeats. This doesn't mean cutting whole grains out of your diet. It means not letting a fiber-focused food stand in as your protein source for the meal. Pair your whole grain toast with eggs, or a slice of turkey, or a serving of cottage cheese. Add a scoop of protein powder or a spoonful of nut butter to your oatmeal. Have a serving of Greek yogurt alongside your cereal instead of milk alone. The grain isn't the problem here. The absence of protein sitting next to it is the actual issue. Number 3, plant-based meat substitutes. This category has grown enormously over the past several years, with plant-based burgers, sausages, ground meat, and even chicken-style products becoming widely available in most grocery stores and heavily marketed as the more responsible, health-conscious choice. I want to be clear about something important here. A well-planned plant-based or vegetarian diet is absolutely capable of meeting all of your protein needs, including the higher needs that come with getting older. This isn't a case against plant-based eating as a category. The concern is more specific, and it's about a particular type of highly processed plant-based meat substitute. Many of these products are engineered primarily to replicate the taste, texture, and cooking behavior of meat as closely as possible, which is a genuinely impressive feat of food science, but it comes with trade-offs. These products are often built from processed plant protein isolates, commonly soy or pea protein, combined with vegetable oils, starches, flavoring agents, and various additives that help mimic the appearance and mouthfeel of real meat when it cooks. Some of these products do contain a reasonable amount of protein per serving, which is worth acknowledging. But that protein often comes from a single isolated source, and depending on the specific protein used, it may not, on its own, provide the full and balanced range of amino acids your body needs in the proportions it needs them. There's also the broader question of processing itself. These products vary considerably in quality from brand to brand. Some are relatively well formulated from a nutritional standpoint. Others are closer to a highly processed convenience food that happens to carry a plant-based label, with a long ingredient list and a nutritional profile that doesn't necessarily support the muscle preservation goals we've been talking about today. If you're relying on one of these products as your primary protein source at multiple meals throughout the week, purely because it's labeled plant-based and therefore assumed to be automatically healthier, you may be shortchanging your overall protein intake and amino acid variety without realizing it. If plant-based eating is part of your lifestyle, whether by choice or necessity, the more reliable approach is to build your protein intake around a variety of whole or minimally processed plant sources, legumes like lentils and chickpeas, tofu, tempeh, edamame, quinoa, and a mix of nuts and seeds. Variety here genuinely matters, because different plant proteins bring different amino acid profiles, and combining several sources across your day helps ensure you're covering the full range your body needs. A processed meat substitute can absolutely be part of that mix occasionally, but it shouldn't be the entire foundation of your protein intake. Number 2. Pre-made salads and using salad as a complete meal. I understand why this one feels confusing to bring up, because a salad is often held up as the definition of eating responsibly. And vegetables genuinely deserve a central place in a healthy diet. The vitamins, minerals, fiber, and variety of plant compounds found in a colorful mix of vegetables offer real, well-established benefits, particularly as we get older. The issue isn't the vegetables. The issue is what a salad often doesn't contain, when it's eaten as an entire meal on its own. A salad built primarily around lettuce, a handful of other vegetables, and a light dressing, without a substantial protein source added, often contains only a few grams of protein for the entire meal. Many pre-made grocery store and restaurant salads are specifically designed around the goals of low calorie count and large visual volume, rather than around nutritional completeness. You can eat a genuinely large bowl of salad, feel physically full because of the volume and fiber content, and still walk away from that meal having consumed a very small amount of protein. If this becomes a regular pattern, salad as the go-to lunch several days a week, without a deliberate protein addition, you're consistently missing one of your body's key daily opportunities to support muscle repair and maintenance. And there's a secondary effect worth mentioning. Because the salad is filling in terms of physical volume, thanks to the fiber and water content of the vegetables, you may not feel hungry again for a while afterward, which means you're less likely to naturally compensate by eating more protein later in the day either. None of this means you should stop eating salads. Quite the opposite, salads are genuinely valuable. It means you should stop treating a salad as automatically nutritionally complete just because it's full of vegetables. Add a real, substantial protein source, grilled chicken, salmon or another fish, a couple of hard-boiled eggs, a serving of chickpeas or black beans, or a portion of steak or tofu, depending on your preferences. A salad built around vegetables and a proper protein source is genuinely one of the best meals you can eat, at any age. A salad without that protein source is, nutritionally speaking, mostly fiber and water, pleasant and hydrating, but not sufficient as a standalone meal, especially not consistently. And now, number 1. The food that surprises people the most, because it's very often positioned as the smartest, most disciplined choice available on the entire grocery store shelf. Number 1 is diet and reduced calorie versions of foods that would otherwise be solid protein sources. This includes things like reduced fat cheese, diet or low-calorie protein bars that are marketed primarily around being low in sugar or low in calories rather than being genuinely built around protein content, and pre-packaged light meals or frozen dinners that trim calories largely by trimming fat and protein, while leaving the carbohydrate portion of the meal relatively untouched. Here's the pattern that shows up again and again across this entire category of light and diet products. When a food company wants to market something as lower calorie, the most straightforward way to bring that calorie number down without dramatically changing the taste is to reduce the fat and protein content, because both of those are more calorie-dense than carbohydrate. The carbohydrate portion of the product often stays roughly the same, or is reduced by a much smaller amount, while sugar, salt, or artificial flavoring is sometimes increased slightly to help keep the product tasting acceptable to consumers despite the changes. The end result is a product that looks responsible from the front of the package. Lower total calories. Lower fat. Sounds exactly like what a health-conscious adult over 60 would want to reach for. But if you flip that same package over and actually compare the protein content to the regular, non-diet version of that same product, you'll often find the protein has been reduced right alongside everything else. You've effectively traded meaningful nutrition, specifically the protein your muscles need, for a smaller number on the calorie count, without necessarily gaining anything nutritionally valuable in return. This matters more than people tend to realize, because a lot of adults over 60 are, understandably and reasonably, paying close attention to their weight, and are naturally drawn toward anything labeled light, diet, or reduced calorie, assuming that label alone signals the more responsible, healthier option across the board. But if that pattern consistently steers you toward lower protein intake across multiple meals and snacks throughout your week, you may be gradually losing muscle mass even while successfully managing the number on the scale. And that is not a favorable trade. Muscle is one of the most important things you can actively work to preserve as you age. It supports your balance and reduces your risk of falling. It plays a meaningful role in your metabolism. It's what allows you to get up out of a low chair, climb a flight of stairs, carry your own groceries, or get up off the floor without needing someone else's help. Protecting it deserves to be at least as much of a priority as managing your weight. The better approach going forward is to shift the order of what you look at on a nutrition label. Instead of looking at the calorie count first and treating that as the primary decision-making factor, look at the protein content first. In many cases, a food that's somewhat higher in total calories but meaningfully higher in protein is going to be the better overall choice for you, compared to a light or diet version of that same product that's achieved its lower calorie count primarily by cutting the one nutrient that matters most for maintaining your strength. Bringing it all together. So let's step back and look at the full picture we've built today. Low-fat yogurt, fruit juice and certain smoothies, reduced-fat nut butters, whole grain breads and cereals eaten without a protein source alongside them, processed plant-based meat substitutes relied on too heavily, salads treated as a complete meal on their own, and diet or reduced-calorie versions of otherwise protein-rich foods. 7 different items, but really, one single theme running underneath all of them. Somewhere in the process of making these foods lower in calories, lower in fat, or more convenient, the protein content quietly got reduced along the way, often without most of us ever noticing, because the packaging and the marketing were built around a different message entirely. None of these 7 foods need to be eliminated completely from your life. This conversation isn't about restriction, and it isn't about fear. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that the word healthy, as it's used on food packaging and in a lot of general nutrition advice, was very often built around goals like weight loss or heart health specifically, without much attention paid to muscle preservation. And after 60, muscle preservation deserves an equal seat at that table. If there's one single habit I'd ask you to genuinely take away from today's video, it's this. Before you reach for something because you've been told, or you've assumed, that it's healthy, pause for a moment and ask a different question. Not how many calories does this have or how much fat does this have, but how much protein is actually in this, and is it enough to meaningfully support what my body needs right now? That one small shift in how you evaluate the food in front of you can make a real difference, meal after meal, week after week, over the months and years ahead. Here's a simple way to start putting this into practice this week. Go through your kitchen and pick out the 3 or 4 items you eat most often, the ones you reach for out of habit almost every single day. Look specifically at the protein content listed on each label. Then, if there's a regular, non-diet, non-light version of that same product available, compare the 2 side by side. You may be surprised at what that comparison reveals. And when you're building your next meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, make it a habit to ask yourself where the protein is in that meal, and make sure it's something you chose deliberately, rather than something you assumed was already taken care of. If today's video gave you something genuinely useful to think about, something you plan to actually look at differently in your own kitchen this week, I'd sincerely appreciate it if you took a moment to share it with someone in your life who might benefit from hearing this too. Maybe a friend, a sibling, or someone you know who's navigating these same questions about eating well as they get older. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. We put out new, practical, honestly researched videos every single week, focused on helping you stay strong, capable, and independent for as many years as possible. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourself, pay attention to what's actually on your plate, and I'll see you in the next one.